Hey, everybody. Welcome to SF Indie Fest. We're celebrating 25 years of bringing some of the coolest, most interesting, irreverent, and just fucking weird movies to San Francisco over 25 years. And you've just had the pleasure of watching a really neat film, A Warm Blood. And we're lucky enough to have the director and producer here. Welcome, Rick, and welcome, Buddy. Good to see you guys.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having us.
Hello.
And you might actually recognize these fellows as they actually brought our opening night film documentary on Tony Alva a couple of years ago, right before shit hit the fan with the pandemic. So
Yeah,
it's great to be back live and in person and having you guys.
thanks, man. Actually, that trip was our last hurrah with Grasso because he passed away shortly after that. So that's definitely
Wow.
a very, very memorable that time on this. Yeah, I think we got the audience award that year. We blew the place out. We had Alva there and Grasso, and we were both there, and the whole that was a really, really good night, man.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun and glad to kind of keep the party going in this way. And so, there's going to be lots of questions I imagine the audience has for you here. But I know this has been kind of a labor of love over quite a few years. Not unusual for indie films, but can you kind of talk about what was the kind of genesis of deciding that what made you want to make this film and what was the kind of process like?
Well, I think like all the years that we spent making skate films, just creeping around in just really strange, forgotten parts of town and rundown, motels and weird towns along the 99. Like we spent a lot of time in those places, making our skate films. And this film ended up taking place in Modesto, which is like super familiar to us because when we used to live out east, we used to come out here to shoot films, and so these were our stomping grounds. They're full. These towns are full of empty pools. That's what we like to skate, and that's what we make films about. So there was always sort of like looking around some of these neighborhoods, or you go to the liquor store or the motel you stay at. There was just like, what the hell's going on here? There was always that was just sort of familiar territory, and it felt like almost sometimes like it was a movie. Just like you go down to the Taco Bell late night and you have an experience, or down to the 7-Eleven, you'd have an experience, you come back to the hotel and be like, whoa, did that just happen? And so, so that sort of weirdness, as a visitor really is clear. Like when you go to Modesto, like you really see that.
And what was the writing process like? I mean, are you guys journalists? Journal people, like, in the sense of like, would you like write down journals or essays over when you're traveling, or there were these kind of visions that kind of took up your mind and then they all kind of came out in a
I
script?
think all of the years of filmmaking and like having our eyes on other things around skateboarding as always like that, all of that informed the making of this film. Like this film is like a skate film, but with no skateboarding. It was all because there was a script written and there was actors, non-actors brought in to play these roles, but Buddy was there and a couple of our assistants were there, like that we used to work with on the love letters, and an old friend of ours who we used to do TV satellite news with in New York. So we just had this whole group of people together, and it almost felt like we were making a movie, but there was other things that were happening that everyone was aware of that they were shooting. And while we were trying to get like the principal scenes done, there was other things that were being shot, such as the news and weird commercial things or just B-roll. So it was just like an all-in kind of like, we did 2 or 3 shoots only to make the whole film, and all the rest was pieced together.
Oh, wow. So it's interesting. I'll have to remember to borrow that phrase of a skate film with no skateboarding in it.
Yeah.
So I probably got ahead of myself in the sense that some of the audience might not be aware of like your kind of filmmaking career beforehand. So could you guys give us a little bit of the lowdown of like what are the sorts of films that you guys have made over the decades, and like what's the approach like that I'm familiar with from your skating films, and then how did that approach kind of then translate into Warm Blood?
I would say, so first we started making films together in 1999. We made our first film called Fruit of the Vine, which is, we shot all in Super 8 film. And it's sort of like, we were taking the idea of the American dream getting turned on its head, the American dream being, 2-car garage, split level ranch, and a pool in the backyard in the 60s. And to now, or at least in 1999, and still now, the pool, those neighborhoods sort of turning over, and maybe, those are now starter homes or, whatever, and the pools are empty, right? And maybe there's a car up on 4 wheels in the front yard or whatever, so it was like, right from that film, we've been, like Rick mentioned, sort of interested in this sort of other side of America, in the set, like you always get to see the nice stuff or whatever. And we come in when the pool's empty and the house is kind of decrepit, and that's just our trip, and maybe like we're hiding from the cops and we're trying not to get caught and we're trespassing. And so Warm Blood really is, like Rick said, an extension of right from the very beginning what we found interesting about, making films and showcasing the kinds of people or the kinds of activity, and exactly like you said, we just replaced the skateboarding,
with someone you made him rub elbows with at the 7-Eleven.
It's like, remember,
like when you get in the car and drive away, like what's that person's life about?
Right.
Well, we decided to go there and tell that story.
It's like that idea in Slacker, where he's following one character and then somebody drives by in a car and the camera goes that way and all of a sudden you're with that character. You know what I mean? So it's like we're saying, like, it's just all the other shit that was going on when we were skating. This film's about all the other stuff that was going on, like maybe in the house, or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I love both the idea and the concept, but also like just how you pulled it together, and I guess I wonder, with your guys' vision for the film, I mean, so was there any anxiety of like making kind of a fiction film, of just like, I mean, you guys obviously have the filmmaking tools, right? But like, was there something about the process that made you just kind of, were you anxious at all? And did the anxiety also just kind of make you excited to kind of take on this new challenge? Because I mean, making a feature film, is, not an easy task.
Yeah. Man, the only thing, like, diving in and getting into it there was no anxiety at all in the actual filmmaking. Like once we actually got our shit together and got down to doing it, it was just on, because you're there and it's live, you don't have a choice. And we've made enough films where we know that we'll get it. We'll get something and we'll get it back to the edit room. At least if we don't get what we want, we'll get something that we can use. The real anxiety came from just like the nuts and bolts fundraising process and the responsibility to the incredible amount of people that you involved in this thing. It's just like you get worn out asking for favors and we owe our lives to everyone, and that's the way our trip works anyway. Our studio is really open to our friends and vice versa. We have a good little scene down here in LA, and so it works. But man, the anxiety just when it started to mount and it went on for years. We didn't make this thing like in one shot. Like the whole process of this thing, from figuring out what we were doing to putting it out, was like 10 years. And all the while this was happening after hours while we were trying to make a living, doing our making our videos as Six there. So there was anxiety with that, I gotta say. What
financial anxiety. I mean, I watched it, this is, I was sort of like, on the side, my joke is that I was sort of like, the midwife or the doula. Rick was the one in, having through going through childbirth. But so what I would feel the anxiety the most, it just like any of our other skate films, the anxiety was letting anybody down. Like when we go and shoot, we make the film for the people in it and the people that, you know, our community, you know, and this thing was the same way. We had established this big community of filmmakers and people that had helped and donated their time and money and you know, taking days off of work and whatever. And it's like, I know that was the biggest stress is, you know, fuck, we don't have the money to pull this thing off to the level that is going to make these people that donated this stuff proud, you know, and that's a huge burden, you know, especially when this is your life, you know, that's the only thing that matters is that, you know, your community, you know, feels good and respected and taken care of, you know. So it's like he carried that on his shoulders. My job was just to sort of alleviate it and help out wherever we could, you know, and deliver this thing. And I, you know, luckily we pulled, well, we more him, but you know, together everybody pulled it off, everybody, you know, and you know, that's why it said, you know, it says a film by Rick Charnowski and his friends, you know, because it's really true, you know, that it's like that it takes a lot of fucking people.
And we involved everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone knew what they were getting. They knew us. They knew our history, and they knew that we would come through. But they also knew it might be a wild ride because we definitely work on a shoestring and by any means necessary, you know. So it's usually just like, fuck, man. It's like you're all in. We're gonna.
It's such a beautiful way. I mean, you know, and I like how you kind of have turned it into. I mean, obviously, filmmaking is a very collaborative art form. I think you know it's underestimated by the general public sometimes in that way. But you know, I love how you just kind of put that front and center. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting way to you know kind of see the film. In filmmaking, do you think was there anything like? So you talked about kind of coming in with these ideas. Were there? I can imagine the different situations that you guys put yourself in making this film, but there must have been some surprises. So is there anything we see on screen or anything that kind of affected stuff that was like kind of a surprise during the making of it that
I'll give this to Buddy to answer because, like I said, Buddy was sort of running, like I would give him and a couple of friends notes on just go get this. And they were just running around. They were like second unit. So when I was focused on trying to pull off these scenes that were going to connect whatever these guys were getting, they were having their own experiences that I'd hear about later on that night or the next morning. So,
I mean,
yeah, he has some good ones. Andy Roy, excuse me, just one other second too.
Yeah.
Andy Roy, I will say, was a massive. He's in the film, and he also was a huge part of that process with Buddy.
yeah, I think you know the way this thing went down was that you know Rick set up the situation where a bunch of different stuff could happen, right? You know, it's like he wrote the music, you know, and then the band gets to play it, you know, or whatever, you know, because they have the written notes there, you know, and so everybody, and so to use that analogy, it's like they, like you said, the principal photography or whatever was going on with Rick and Chris Blauvelt and then me and Andy Roy and one or two other people, we just creedle around where the, you know, and we knock on doors and go in, you know, and behind the dumpster or whatever. That's a little bit much, but you know, in an alley or whatever, and like find people. And the thing that blew me away the most was you explain it a little bit, and 9 out of 10 people were like, "Oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, what do we got to do?"
Like it was like go find 10 people to do a news interview about a string of mysterious murders that nobody knows anything about, and sort of just and then we would just start asking these people questions.
All the people you see on there, we met less than 5 minutes beforehand,
and they would get into it.
and
like,
they were into
fun.
it. They were like, they understood it without too much. We didn't have much time to explain or whatever. They just intuitively were like, "Oh yeah, I get it. You guys are doing like a thing. Sure, okay, just go for it." And you're just like, "Holy crap! How are people so smart? Like on it? You know what I mean?" That's the thing, I guess, that surprised me the most. Of like, people are just like
into getting into
and they're with it, you know, and creative and funny. You know,
Yeah.
funny is the
Yeah.
other thing that always blows me away.
They got the sort of
Like,
weird
sort of joke, not joke,
bad
like,
news
whatever,
joke shit we were making. Yeah.
Yeah,
they
so I
understood
mean,
that.
I guess that's like, you know, surprising in a good way, you know, in a good way. I mean, all the surprises I would say were positive. You know, there weren't really any like we went up there and this sucks or these people are fucked, you know, or whatever. It was all the
Or
other.
they were like, these people were fucked towards us.
No, it was, everybody was cool and was down.
And again, that
to
all
help.
comes from our years of barging around the world, skateboarding, you know, because our skateboarding and our filmmaking always involves trespassing and short amounts of time to create relationships and make things happen.
And I should just take a moment, just like, guys, if you got you to see Warm Blood tonight, it's like, do check out some of their skating films. Whether you think you want to watch a skateboarding film or not, they just are really great storytellers. And obviously, Fruit of the Vine is a classic. So like, dig it
Thanks.
up and watch it. You don't have to be into skateboarding to enjoy it.
That's sort of our, yeah, I'm stoked you said that because we set out to make skate films for skaters and non-skaters. Obviously, a lot of people wouldn't like them because they don't give a crap, but you know, hopefully we've been able to just interest people a little bit in like, hey, isn't this weird? You know, you don't got to even watch the whole thing. Watch 5 minutes of it. I don't, you know,
Look at our weird
or
world.
don't watch it at all. You
So
know,
this question, I'm hoping doesn't sound so trite, but I know that like people would be kind of curious, right? So like, you know, what kind of got you into kind of making films, right? So I mean, obviously, like documenting the skateboarding scenes, like it's kind of big thing, and it's, you know, its own kind of subculture to the kind of general. But like, what made you guys decide to pick up cameras, and that was like the scene that you wanted to tell stories in, and also just like what made you want to make films, whatever it was?
Self-documentation first and foremost, because we're skaters and like when we were kids, not everyone had a video camera, certainly no iPhones, whatever. So a recording device was rare. Occasionally a friend would have one, and when that thing showed up, you would shoot you and your friend skating, you know, and then you'd watch it. And then if you had some time that night, maybe you'd make some weird film at the house, you know, do some trippy shit with time lapse or whatever. But I think the camera was always connected, probably to Buddy too, you know. I'll let him answer for himself. But yeah, through skateboarding. It's like, we're skating, who's got a camera? Let's make videos. And then the biggest like inspiration, I think, was when we figured out, like, I mean, and it's so primitive, we figured out, like, we didn't go to film school. I mean, this is ancient technology, but like when we started putting sound under Super 8 film and syncing it up to skating, and then like seeing and hearing that connection, and then like cutting to interviews talking under it, like it was really weird. It was when we figured out this strange, we started playing around with like a Maisels or a Pennebaker kind of documentary style, but like with skateboarding, you know. And when we figured out that little equation of interview under Super 8 film with sound connected to it, and then there's a story, and then it cuts to another scene, that was like magic. That was like when we first cut our first trailer for this film, Fruit of the Vine. That's when we experimented with that. And I'll show this again because it's, you know, sitting right here. But that was the inspiration. That was like, holy shit. We were filming, like, we're telling, this is like a movie, but it's us and our friends. It's crazy.
yeah, that's the same. I mean, yeah, you pretty much nailed it. I mean, I didn't get bitten. Like I got a video camera in '94. Always, like said, growing up, you know, the goal was to like, oh, this is so cool. You get to see yourself skating, you know. So through the '80s, somebody might have had a camera here and there, but in '94, I got my own little handy cam, and I was pretty stoked on it. But by '96, I got a Super 8 camera, and bringing it to the lab and getting it back, and I had a projector and watching it on a projector. Man. That's when I got hooked. Was that process? It's funny because right when it ended, right? You know, I mean, Super 8 ended in '82. But there was still, in New York, you could buy brand new Super 8 cameras still at like Ogden Camera or, you know, some of the big camera houses. You could still buy dead stock.
That was late '90s. So when we started
96,
when we started tripping out on Super 8 together in the late '90s in New York City, when we both lived there was a place called Pack Lab, which was down on like Second and First, or something,
Second and First.
and right next to the Anthology Film Archive. And then there was another film lab over near NYU that we went to.
No, that was just the place to drop it off, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. There was a couple places, and we just got obsessed, dude. Shooting film, taking it in, getting it processed, getting it back, and throwing that shit up onto the wall with a projector. That's it. That's fucking
That's
magic.
what got us.
It feels just like that same when you see those old film documentaries about Lumiere or whatever, like these first zoetropes and these first putting light behind things and projecting things, the excitement of that. Like I felt like we had our own personal moment with that.
Yeah, when it feels like you're inventing,
oh my God.
It feels like you're inventing something. You know, it's like when we were little kids, skating was so fragmented and disconnected. Every time you'd learn a trick, you thought you or your buddy invented it, you know? And it was the same idea. Like with us, we get these cameras and we start doing stuff. And we're like, it felt like we were inventing the stuff. Obviously, we had not even close, you know, in skating or in filmmaking. But that's what's so fun. That's what gets you super excited, you know, is that you really feel that close connection to like, oh my God, I'm doing this. Are you seeing this? You know, and we would get excited off each other, like, can you believe this is happening? You know, and
also Super 8, you're so used to. Another thing was seeing radical action on Super 8 was fucking cool, because all you were, you know, Super 8 was just like boring family shit, you know, Grand Canyon and like birthday parties. But here's like your friend like flipping into a bowl and like crushing a beer on his head, and you're fucking the Q-Man flies over him, and you know, it's just like, yes, like this looks weird on Super 8. You don't ever see this.
Yeah. Oh, that's totally true. Well, guys, before we wrap up, I have to go get my daughter from elementary school in a minute. But,
sorry, we kept you.
No. It just, you make my mind go in so many different places in a great way. So obviously we're looking forward to kind of the next films that you guys make. And, you know, I always try to remind, you know, our audiences at home and audiences in the theaters, like, we're your grassroots street team. We're lucky enough that you share these films with film festivals. And so our job is to kind of let people know about these kind of badass films that we get a chance to see. So how can folks continue to kind of follow the film and also your guys, you know, other filmmaking things? And how can we kind of help spread the word?
Okay, 2 places. I guess, I mean, you know, the film has its own like social media thing, and we're also God, is it too early to say what our distribution, or do we
no, I mean,
okay, I mean, we didn't sign yet, whatever, but yeah, okay. So Warm Blood is, are you editing this? I hope so, because I just stumbled on. Warm Blood is going to be distributed by Factory 25.
Oh, sweet.
Our friend Matt Grady, who we know as far back as, I keep showing you this DVD, but they put out on Plexifilm in 2002. We know Matt Grady from back then, so that gets distribution upcoming this spring, summer. And as far as Six Stare, which is our production company, it's at Six Stare on you know, Instagram, and
YouTube is YouTube/Six Stare or whatever.
yeah. So Six Stare and Warm Blood are 2 things you can search. So the film is being released with Factory 25. Six Stare continues to operate into our 25th year together. And yeah, the future, we're sitting here right now making films as we speak, him in that room working on something, and me here in this room chipping away.
Well, very cool. Well, congratulations, guys. Everybody remember to kind of spread all about Warm Blood here on social media. And, you know, Rick and Buddy, just, you know, thanks again for sharing your film with us.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for having us, and thanks to your festival too. It's fucking badass festival, and I hope a lot of people show up and log in and watch movies. It's a good thing you guys are doing.
Very cool, guys.